I never imagined a normal morning could turn into the beginning of a war. But that's exactly what happened the day I opened my front door and found a single white envelope, taped right in the middle like someone wanted to make sure I couldn't possibly miss it. The sun was warm, the birds were doing their usual chatter, and everything felt calm, until I saw those thick red letters across the top of the envelope screaming, "Final notice, HOA dues required immediately." For a second, I actually looked behind me checking the house number, wondering if maybe this was meant for someone else. Because for 10 straight years I had lived outside the HOA, not near it, not sort of touching the line. I was fully, unquestionably outside their precious little bubble of rules and regulations. Their notices didn't apply to me. Their fines weren't my business. Their drama was something I listened to from a distance, usually shaking my head and thanking God I wasn't part of it. So why was there a final notice taped to my door? I opened the envelope at the kitchen table, expecting to find some silly mistake inside. Instead, my hands literally went cold as I read the words. According to them, a recent boundary adjustment. Now place my property inside their HOA, just like that, as if someone drew a crayon line on a map and decided I belonged to them now. And then came the real punch to the gut. They claimed I owed $1,084 in backdated dues. Backdated. For a neighborhood I never joined, never signed anything for, and never received a single benefit from. But the part that made my stomach twist into a knot was the last line. Failure to pay may result in legal action, including eviction. Eviction. From my own home. A home I worked years for. A home I maintained with my own money, not theirs. They were threatening to kick me out over dues. I didn't owe for an HOA I wasn't part of. And in that moment, I wasn't confused. I was angry. Angry in a way I hadn't felt in years. I marched straight to their office that same afternoon. A little building decorated like it was trying too hard to look important. Inside, a woman with a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes greeted me. I slid the letter across the counter and told her flat out, "This is wrong. I've never been part of your HOA and I'm not paying this." She looked at the letter, then at me with that expression people use when they think you're too dumb to understand something. "Sir," she said softly, "according to our updated map, your home now falls under our community guidelines. You are required to comply. Required to comply. Like I was some soldier in their little neighborhood army." I asked to see the map. She said it wasn't public. I asked who approved the change. She told me it was internal business. I asked for any document, anything to prove what she was claiming. Her smile didn't move an inch as she said, "I'm afraid I can't share that information." That was the moment I realized something wasn't just wrong. Something was corrupt. A week later, I went to their board meeting, even though I wasn't invited. 5 board members sat behind a long table, acting like they were running the Supreme Court instead of a neighborhood association. When they called my name, I held up the notice and said, "I never signed anything that puts me in your HOA. My deed proves I'm outside your boundaries. Your map is wrong, and you know it. You can't demand money from people you don't represent." The room went silent. Then the board president, a tall man with slick silver hair and an ego you could probably see from space, leaned back in his chair and said, "Your property benefits from our community. Therefore, you must contribute." I almost laughed. "So, if I walk near a Ferrari," I said, "does that mean I get to take it home because I'm close enough to benefit from it?" A few people in the audience tried not to laugh, but the president didn't find it funny. He stared at me and said, "You have 30 days to pay. After that, we'll pursue legal action." Legal action. They were dead serious. They thought they could bully me, intimidate me, pressure me into paying money I didn't owe. And maybe that works on some people. Maybe a lot of people, but not on me. Not when it came to my home. That night, I covered my dining table with every document I owned, my deed. Property surveys, tax history, old boundary maps, county records, everything I could find. I stayed up until 3 in the morning digging through papers, cross-checking coordinates, comparing maps, even calling up digital archives. And there it was, clear as day. My home was outside the HOA boundary, officially, legally, without question, which meant the letter wasn't just a mistake. It was a lie. Someone inside that HOA wanted my house under their control, and they were willing to redraw imaginary lines to make it happen. The moment I realized that, Something shifted inside me. All the fear evaporated. All the confusion turned into determination. I wasn't just defending my property anymore. I was standing up to a group of people who had gotten used to scaring others into submission. They picked the wrong house this time. I wasn't going anywhere. If they wanted a fight, then a fight is exactly what they were going to get. They started this war with a fake map and a letter taped to my door. But I was going to finish it with real documents, real proof, and a stubbornness they clearly weren't prepared for. They thought they could push me, but they had no idea how hard I could push back. I wish I could tell you the HOA backed off after I confronted them, or that showing up at their board meeting scared them into leaving me alone. But people like that, they don't back off. If anything, me challenging them only made them hungrier. Like a pack of dogs that smelled a fight and couldn't resist going after it. The first real sign of trouble came 3 days later, when I stepped outside to get the mail and noticed a woman in a neon safety vest standing on my property with a clipboard. She wasn't from the city. She wasn't a utility worker. She was HOA, and she was taking pictures. I walked straight toward her. "Can I help you?" She didn't even look up at first, just snapped another picture of my driveway before finally saying, "We're conducting an inspection." Inspection? Of what? My house wasn't even under their jurisdiction. I told her she had no right to be on my property. She shrugged and said, "All properties under HOA oversight are subject to routine evaluation." And that word, oversight, hit me like a punch. They were already talking like they owned me, like they had the final say, like my home wasn't mine anymore. I took a step toward her and pointed to the street. "You need to leave. Now." She didn't argue, didn't debate. She just wrote something on her clipboard and walked away like she'd seen everything she needed to see. That night I found another envelope, this time inside my mailbox instead of taped to the door. When I opened it, my jaw clenched so tight I felt my teeth ache. It was a violation notice, an actual violation notice for non-compliant fence height, unapproved exterior colors, and unauthorized walkway plants. Plants. They were now policing my plants. My fence had been the same height for a decade. My house color hadn't changed in 10 years. They were making violations up out of thin air. It didn't take long before the phone calls started. Unknown numbers, repeated messages, the same robotic tone. "This is a courtesy reminder regarding your outstanding balance. Please respond immediately to avoid escalation." I blocked the numbers. New ones popped up. I ignored calls. They left voicemails. It felt like harassment, because that's exactly what it was. The worst part, though, wasn't the notices or the calls. It was the neighbors. People I'd spoken to for years. People who used to wave at me from their lawns. Suddenly, they acted different. Some wouldn't look me in the eye. Others whispered as I walked past. One neighbor, a man I'd helped move a refrigerator once, actually crossed the street to avoid me. It didn't take long before I found out why. The HOA was telling everyone that I was refusing to pay dues. They were painting me like some freeloading troublemaker who wanted the benefits of the neighborhood without contributing. They were turning people against me on purpose. And then came the letter, the one that truly lit the fuse. It was from the HOA's attorney. Yes, an attorney. The letter said that if I didn't pay the full amount, plus a new late fee, plus the cost of their inspection, they would file a lien against my property. A lien, a legal lock on my home. That meant I couldn't sell it, refinance it, borrow against it, nothing. They were trying to trap me, and once they had that lien in place, eviction would just be the next step. I sat there in my kitchen holding that letter, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt scared, truly scared. Not for the fight, not for myself, but for my home. The place where I'd built memories, had holidays, repaired floors with my own 2 hands, painted walls at midnight during a heat wave, and watched rainstorms from the front porch. The thought of losing this place because of a corrupt HOA made my stomach sink in a way I can't fully explain. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and squeezed. So I called a lawyer of my own, a local property attorney named Harris. He talked fast, asked a million questions, and didn't sugarcoat anything. When I showed him the letters, he frowned and tapped his pen on the desk. "They can't just redraw boundaries without county approval," he said. "And even if they tried, they need your signature to add your property to the association." That gave me a little hope. Just a flicker. Harris promised he'd dig into the county records, check the plat maps, and see if there was any legal ground for their claims. 2 days later, he called me back. His tone told me everything before he even said the words. "You're not going to like this," he said. The HOA had submitted a boundary adjustment request to the county. It hadn't been approved yet, but it had been filed. They were trying to officially absorb my home into the HOA. That meant if it went through, they could legally enforce dues and restrictions. They were basically trying to rewrite history in real time. But here's the crazy part. They filed the adjustment using a survey map that wasn't accurate. In fact, Harris said the coordinates were so off, it looked like someone had manually redrawn property lines. That wasn't just wrong. It was fraudulent, illegal, a direct attempt to seize control of my land through lies. The moment he told me that, the fear inside me didn't disappear. It changed. It hardened. It sharpened. And it turned into something that felt a whole lot like resolve. I wasn't just defending my home anymore. I was defending myself against people who thought they could bully anyone they wanted. People who counted on their victims being too scared or too tired to fight back. Well, I wasn't tired, and I wasn't backing down. If they wanted a war, I was done playing defense. It was time to hit back. Not with anger. Not with shouting. With proof. With the law. With every document they thought I didn't have. They thought I was alone. They thought I was an easy target. They thought I'd fold. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The shift from being hunted to fighting back didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one big moment of courage. It was a slow burn. A pressure building inside me until I couldn't sit quietly anymore. Harris, my attorney, told me we needed to gather every scrap of proof showing the HOA was lying. And I did exactly that. I went full detective. My living room floor turned into a sea of documents. Old surveys, property blueprints, land plats, aerial photos from the county website, dating back 15 years. I even dug up an old folder from the previous homeowner, with receipts and handwritten notes about the original boundary markers. It felt like I was piecing together a puzzle someone tried to scatter on purpose. But while I was gathering my proof, the HOA was upping their game too. They started mailing me letters almost daily. Bright yellow warnings, red slips, even a pink one that looked like someone designed it just to make me mad. The tone kept getting harsher. "You are in violation. You have failed to comply. Immediate action is required." And every time, I wrote the same thing in black marker on the envelope. "Not a member." Then I stacked them on the counter like trophies, proof, evidence, ammunition. One afternoon, things escalated in a way I never expected. I was dragging a trash bin to the curb when a man wearing an HOA badge approached me. He looked like someone who'd been waiting for this moment. Like he enjoyed stirring up trouble. "Sir, your bin is not within the approved placement zone." "That's a violation." I actually laughed. It was either laugh or scream, and I wasn't in the mood to scream at a grown man policing trash cans like he was doing God's work. "I'm not part of your HOA," I told him. "You have no authority here." His lips curled into a smirk that made my skin crawl. "You will be," he said, "one way or another." Then he casually snapped a photo of my trash bin, my driveway, and even my house, before walking off like he owned the whole street. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was intimidation. The next day, I woke up to find a giant, blazing orange notice stuck to my front door like a scarlet letter. "Final warning before legal action." The color alone made my heart race. It was meant to. They wanted me rattled. They wanted me scared. They wanted me broken. I stood there staring at that paper for a long time, and for a moment, I felt something tightening in my chest. Not fear, but anger. The kind of anger that isn't loud or messy. The kind that's focused, cold, clear. I pulled the notice off the door, folded it neatly, and put it in the same pile of evidence I'd been building. If they wanted to play dirty, fine, but I was done playing by their rules. A few days later, Harris called and told me there was a county hearing scheduled regarding the boundary adjustment. This was it. This was the moment they were betting everything on. If the adjustment went through, even fraudulently, they'd have the power to force me into the HOA and pin me down with dues, fines, liens, everything they'd been threatening. If it got rejected, their whole scheme would collapse. I'd finally have something to hit them back with. Hard. I prepared like my home depended on it. Because it did. I organized documents into folders, labeled everything, printed out satellite images with dates, highlighted parts of the official plat map, and even mapped out the original stakes the first surveyor had placed years ago. I barely slept. Didn't eat much either. My nerves felt like live wires. But underneath it all was something else. This growing sense of purpose. Like I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for everyone the HOA had ever bullied into silence. When the day of the hearing came, I walked into the county building with my chest tight and my hands sweating, but my mind razor sharp. The HOA board was already there, dressed like they were testifying in a courtroom drama, suits, folders, smug expressions. The board president nodded at me with this half smile that said, "You're already defeated." He had no idea what was coming. The hearing began. The HOA presented their case first, talking about community consistency and unified neighborhood. Appearance, like they cared about aesthetics more than power. Then they unveiled their updated map, which looked like a rushed draft drawn by someone who thought a straight line was optional. The county official looked confused. "Where did this data come from?" she asked. The board president replied with a smooth, practiced tone, "Our contracted surveyor. He didn't mention the fact that the surveyor's report wasn't signed." I noticed. So did Harris. Then it was our turn. Harris stood up calm and confident, and placed our stack of documents on the table like he was setting down a weapon. "The homeowner's property has never been and is not currently located within the HOA boundary," he said. "What you're looking at in their submission is not a survey. It's a manipulated map." The room shifted. People leaned forward. And then he called me up. Standing there, holding a 15-year-old plat map, I felt every eye in the room on me. But I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I pointed to the original coordinates, explained how they matched county records, and showed photos proving where the physical boundary markers had always been. Then I pulled out a printed Google Earth image time-stamped. 8 years earlier, long before the HOA ever decided they wanted to expand. That was the knockout punch. The county official stared at the documents for a long, silent moment. Then she turned to the HOA. "Do you have any legitimate survey materials to support your claim?" The board president opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence. Real, heavy silence. For the first time since this nightmare started, he didn't have an answer. The official finally said the words I had been waiting to hear for weeks. "Based on the evidence provided, the boundary adjustment request is denied." Denied. The word felt like a wave crashing over me, relief so strong my knees almost buckled. The HOA members looked stunned, like someone had pulled the floor out from under them. The board president clenched his jaw, his eyes flicking to me with a look that wasn't just anger. It was humiliation. He was exposed, cornered, and he hated it. As I walked out of that building, the weight that had been suffocating me finally lifted. I had done it. I had beaten them. Or at least, I thought I had. Because little did I know, the HOA wasn't done. Losing the hearing didn't stop them. It only made them desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. Winning that hearing should have been the end. It should have closed the book, slammed the door, shut them down for good. But if there's one thing I learned, it's that people in power don't like losing. And when they do lose, they don't quietly accept it. They retaliate. The HOA couldn't redraw boundaries without getting caught. They couldn't get the county on their side, and they couldn't intimidate me into paying something I didn't owe. So they went for the one thing they had left, making my life as miserable as possible. It started subtly. My trash cans mysteriously ended up knocked over almost every morning. Not once or twice, every day. My mailbox door was bent. Someone left a fake city citation on my windshield. And my lawn? Suddenly it became a gathering place for stray dogs. At first I brushed it all off. Coincidence, maybe. Annoying, but manageable. But deep down I knew better. None of this was random. It was slow, calculated pressure. They wanted me stressed, distracted, overwhelmed. They wanted me to slip, to snap, to give up. But the moment I realized this wasn't just pettiness, but a full-blown attack, was the day I found a letter shoved under my front door. It wasn't official. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten. Sharp, rushed handwriting that read, "You're ruining our neighborhood. Stop fighting and pay what you owe." No signature, no name, just a threat. A personal one. And for the first time in this whole mess, the anger wasn't just about me. It was about the absolute nerve of people who thought intimidation was part of their job. I brought the note to Harris. He stared at it a long time before saying, "They know they can't win legally, so now they're trying to crack you mentally." He wasn't wrong, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. Fear wasn't going to crack me. Stress wasn't going to drive me out. If anything, everything they were doing was making me stronger. And that's when Harris gave me the idea that changed everything. "If they keep harassing you," he said, "you can file a civil claim. Harassment, intimidation, fraud. This isn't small stuff. We can hit them where it actually hurts." I didn't want to sue. I just wanted peace. I wanted the life I had before all of this started. But they weren't giving me a choice. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing. So we pushed back. We gathered everything, every fake notice, every inspection photo, every time-stamped envelope, every voicemail, every incident I documented. Harris helped me organize it into a case so solid, I knew the board wouldn't be able to wiggle out of it. A week later, the HOA received a thick packet of papers with my name on the front and one word inside that snapped. Their necks back. Lawsuit. And suddenly, everything changed. Within days, the tone of their letters softened. Then they stopped entirely. The trash cans stayed upright. The mailbox wasn't touched. The inspection agent magically disappeared. The neighbors who avoided me slowly started waving again. It was like the whole neighborhood took a breath at the same time. The board thought I was just another homeowner they could bully. They never expected someone to stand up and shove back harder. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. But they didn't even make it that far. 3 weeks before the hearing, Harris called me and said, "They want to settle." The board asked for a meeting. I didn't want one. I didn't want anything to do with them. But Harris said, "It's better to hear them out." So I went. The president, the same man who had stared me down at the county hearing like he owned the world, didn't look so powerful now. He didn't lean back. He didn't smirk. He didn't act like I was beneath him. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "We'd like to resolve this peacefully, peacefully." After weeks of harassment, threats, manipulation, now they wanted peace? Harris stayed quiet, waiting for me to respond. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the people who tried to take my home, my peace, my sanity. Then I told them the only thing that felt right. Leave me alone permanently. And that was the deal. The HOA signed an agreement stating they acknowledged my property was not and never had been part of their association. They agreed to cease all contact with me. They agreed to stop all enforcement attempts, present or future. And they agreed to pay my legal fees, every last penny. I walked out of that room not just a homeowner, but a man who refused to be pushed, bullied, or controlled. When I got home that evening, I sat on my front porch with a coffee in my hand and watched the sun sink behind the houses. For the first time in months, the air felt light, quiet, safe. I realized something important that night. Sometimes the fight you never ask for becomes the fight that teaches you exactly who you are. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's steady. Sometimes it's calm. Sometimes it's just refusing to let anyone take what's yours. The HOA thought they could scare me. Instead, they woke up the part of me that doesn't run, doesn't fold, doesn't break. They thought they chose the wrong homeowner to mess with. Turns out, they chose the worst one. And that's how it ended. Not with fear, not with defeat, but with victory, quiet, solid, earned victory. I kept my home. I kept my freedom. And the HOA learned a lesson they'll never forget. And if you're listening to this right now, don't ever let anyone bully you into silence. Stand your ground, fight back, and make sure they remember the day they tried to mess with the wrong person. Before you go, do me one favor. Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and turn on VIP notifications so you don't miss the next story. Trust me, you'll want to be here for it.